Cloud Strife, former soldier, first class. What a ride he has had from beginning to end. As the main man in one of the most memorable and beloved Final Fantasy stories of all time, there's little doubt that Cloud's story is one of the most interesting stories we've ever seen in a game, and the revelations, twists, and turns that characterize it have managed to stand out in our memories to this day. With Final Fantasy VII Remake barely days away now, we've been taking a look back at the full story of many of its most important characters from the original and other compilation titles, and here, our focus is going to be entirely on Cloud Strife. Though Cloud's journey was already full of strife, bad pun absolutely intended, in the original Final Fantasy VII, the game and its prequels and sequels would also reveal in bits and pieces that he'd been going through hardships for pretty much his entire life. Cloud hails from the mountain village of Nibelheim. When he was very young, his father passed away and his mother raised him alone, and to make things even more difficult for a young boy going through a tough time, Cloud didn't really have any friends either. As a defense mechanism, he told himself that he was superior to all of the kids that refused to be his friends anyway, and that he wasn't missing out on anything. The closest he came to making a friend was with a girl slightly younger than him that lived close to his house, called Tifa Lockhart. Though the two were never really all that close, they did consider each other friends. And for Cloud, a lonely young kid who lost his father at a very young age, that was a very precious thing. When Cloud was 9 and Tifa a little younger, Tifa lost her mother as well. But her young mind convinced itself that somehow if she could get across Mount Nibel, a mountain that loomed over the village, she would be able to see her mother again. Tifa set out to do just that, but Cloud followed her, wanting to keep an eye on her, which was lucky for her as it turned out because when she took a wrong step and slipped, it was Cloud who grabbed her and saved her from plummeting to her death. Well, he tried at any rate. Both of them ended up falling, and though they did not die, of course, they did incur injuries, Tifa especially, who came to within an inch of losing her life. The people of Nibelheim assumed that their idea to trek across Mount Nibel had been Cloud's idea, and Tifa's father blamed him for her condition and forbade him from ever seeing her again. Cloud, who already had his fair share of issues, not only lost the only friend he had, he also blamed himself for failing to save Tifa from taking a fall, and this led to even more anger problems. Years later, at age 14, Cloud decided that there was nothing for him in Nibelheim anymore. Sneaking out one night, he told Tifa that he was going to leave, that he would go to Midgar, the seat of power for the global megacorporation Shinra Electric Power Company, and become a soldier, following in the footsteps of the legendary Sephiroth, whom Cloud idolized. He followed through on that desire, but he did not reach the heights he was hoping to get to. Failing to make a very strong impression, Cloud never makes it into soldier, instead finds himself as a regular Shinra infantryman. Ashamed of that failure, he cuts off all contact with people from Nibelheim. Soon, however, Cloud meets someone who would go on to have a huge impact on him as a person and the things that happened to him down the road. A first-class soldier named Zack Fair. One of Zack's missions concerning problems with former Shinra employee Dr. Hollander and rogue first-class soldier Genesis Rhapsodus, Cloud helps out Zack with various things, and the two quickly develop a friendship over how much they realize that they have in common with each other. And though it's only a brief encounter in the grand scheme of things, it goes on to become the foundation of a very important bond. Because they meet once again about a year down the road, with Zack still dealing with the actions of Genesis, which have now escalated from when Cloud met him last. When Cloud meets Zack this time, the latter also now becomes the current owner of the iconic Buster Sword that Cloud himself goes on to inherit eventually, though we'll get to that a little bit later. Interestingly enough, Zack himself also inherited the sword from someone else, his former mentor and friend Angeal Penance, who bequeaths this weapon to him in his final moments. Genesis is now attacking the city of Junon, and Cloud helps Zack defend the city. Following that, Zack, who is on this mission with none other than fellow soldier Sephiroth, has to head to Cloud's village, Nibelheim, where he and Sephiroth have to investigate a damaged Mako reactor. Cloud heads to Nibelheim with them as well, where a young Tifa serves as their guide, though Cloud, who is still ashamed that he never became the soldier the way that he had promised he would, keeps his face hidden behind a helmet the entire time, refusing to reveal his identity to anyone other than a brief reunion with his mother. Cloud, Zack, and Sephiroth's trip to Nibelheim, however, proves to be a fateful one, because it is here that Sephiroth learns what his true nature is. Or, well, to be more accurate, the things he finds here are what leads him down the path to discovering his true nature. Though we'll be going over that in a much greater detail in a feature dedicated entirely to Sephiroth. Here's the gist of things, though. Sephiroth goes on to spend several sleepless days and nights locked away in Shinra Manor, where he pores over every word of Professor Gast's writing, from which he learns about the Cetra and Genova, an extremely powerful extraterrestrial harbinger of destruction, his own dark past and twisted past, and so much more. And he comes to believe that humans are a plague on Gaia. This all leads Sephiroth into a fury-fueled rampage, which causes him to use immense powers to completely destroy the village of Nibelheim. Many people die, including Cloud's own mother. Cloud, driven by a sudden need for vengeance for his act, picks up an unconscious Zack's Buster Sword and goes after Sephiroth. The two are locked in a furious conflict, and though Cloud is severely injured, he manages to defeat Sephiroth, throwing him into the depths of a Mako pit. Following that, however, Cloud, Zack, and all the survivors of Nibelheim are taken captive by Shinra and become the test subjects of Professor Hojo, though Tifa does escape this fate, having managed to escape the village while Sephiroth was on his rampage. Hojo exposes each of them to Mako, while also injecting them all with Genova cells, in an attempt to test something he calls the reunion theory, creating various Sephiroth copies in the process, or Sephiroth clones as the game calls them, though this is actually a misnomer in its Western translations. This, too, is something we'll be covering in much greater detail when we talk about Sephiroth in a separate feature, but you do need a brief understanding of what Professor Hojo's reunion theory is for Cloud's story as well, so here it is. According to Hojo's reunion theory, Genova cells, once they've been separated, will find ways to reunite with each other in order to return to the main body, and in doing so, they will exert control and influence over the minds of those that they've been injected into. Zack and Cloud are both part of these experiments, but both react to these tests very differently. Zack, having already gone through similar stuff, especially when it comes to exposure to Mako during his soldier training, doesn't react a whole lot to the experiments. Meanwhile, Cloud develops a serious case of Mako poisoning, and so Professor Hojo declares both of them failed test subjects, if for very different reasons, and then goes on to place both of them in a cryogenic sleep. Their pods are placed in the basement of the Shinra Manor, where they remain for many long years in an uninterrupted deep freeze sleep. Their slumber ends when, 4 years later, Zack is able to break free from his confinement. He releases a vegetative and extremely weak Cloud from his imprisonment as well, helping him change into soldier clothes to replace the Mako-soaked ones that he was presently in, and then helps him escape from that facility. In the months that follow, they come across many hurdles while being on the run, including a final climactic showdown between Zack and Genesis in which the latter is finally defeated, but Cloud, weak from his ordeal and from excessive exposure to Mako, is unable to help at all. During this journey, Zack also tells Cloud about his life and his memories, before sharing his plan with both for their futures, that they would head to Midgar and operate there as mercenaries. When the two arrive outside Midgar after nearly a year of being on the run, though, things don't turn out the way that they had planned. Shinra forces catch up with the two of them, and Zack puts up a glorious fight against them. It is all for naught, however, as he is eventually gunned down. The Shinra forces leave him to die, and don't really pay much mind to the catatonic and weakened Cloud. In his final moments, Zack entrusts his Buster Sword to Cloud, telling him that his legacy will live on with him, much like his own former mentor Angeal had done with him. He also heads to Midgar with a completely addled mind, to put it mildly. A combination of various traumatic events sends him reeling from the collective backlash. The destruction of Nibelheim and the death of his mother, the experiments done on him by Hojo, and the Mako poisoning that led to. All of this creates confused memories, and Cloud combines many of them together, an impersonation of Zack's personality, what he believes an ideal first-class soldier's personality should be, and Tifa's memories of Cloud into a single new personality, and subconsciously adopts that as his own. He also creates a new set of memories, in which he completely replaces Zack with himself, forgetting he ever existed. The Mako poisoning confuses him so much that he believes himself to be a former soldier, an ex-partner of Sephiroth the way Zack was. And so, Cloud Strife, ex-soldier first class with Buster Sword in hand, heads into Midgar to ply his trade as a mercenary. And that's it for part 1 of our recap of Cloud's story. When we return for part 2, we'll recount the events of Final Fantasy VII before briefly also discussing Advent Children. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.